portions I missed out, and I'll get back to you on those, sir, to ask you clarity on that. But let me first take on from Sagarmala, favorite subject of mine, being a naval officer. You're absolutely correct, sir. It's wonderfully said.
Global IME Bank, Sabai ka lagi bank.
Nepal is as much a maritime country as India is. In fact, last few years, we've been talking of that the 21st century is actually the century of the seas. And we are seeing that increasingly in the last couple of decades of how closely it is linked to Indian growth and development. And by extension, to Nepal's, because of open borders, because of those links. When you talk of importing oil, just one figure for you. India's dependence on the seas for oil is 96%. 89% is directly imported. 25% of what is imported is re-exported. Out of the domestic production of 11%, half of that, 5.5% is offshore. Now, considering the amount of flow of energy oil to Nepal, the security and growth at sea is impacting you, and that's why you very correctly have brought out and said, Indo-Pacific security impacts you as well. Imagine when you have pirates in the Red Sea, when you have piracy of Somalia, when you have disruption of trade, when you have disruption in the Persian Gulf, and oil flow gets disrupted for any reason, it impacts you as much. Likewise, when you have growth of the port connectivity across India and the time taken, 10 years ago, it used to take 4 days for a ship to unload in any average Indian port. Now it's down to 1 day, better than the global average. Now that connectivity is because of Sagarmala. That same Sagarmala connectivity is extended to Nepal and to you. So when we talk at times nowadays and we say India is actually an island state with land borders, as much as you said, so is Nepal, an island state connected to the seas through Indian connections, and those links must remain at the back of our mind as to how do we strengthen those links, make the movement across it easier, faster, with greater volumes, because that automatically takes care of the economies of scale and takes care of both our requirements. Absolutely correct that Nepal's involvement in the Bay of Bengal, in the Indian Ocean, is vital. And that's why you are a central figure in the BIMSTEC. In various discussions that have taken place in the BIMSTEC, times people have asked this question and wondered, why is Nepal there? Because Nepal, as you very correctly have brought out, has got a huge dependence on the seas. It's just that the proximity from the seas is a little bit further, but that little bit further is no longer to be looked upon in times of distance, it will be looked upon in times of time. And while the distance remains the same, the time is getting reduced with the growth of connectivity. So yes, the ongoing measures in your ongoing institutional mechanisms and a greater attention to the seas is very much required, and that's exactly what you're doing. And all the linkages that you have with institutions across in India, I think they're coming in handy to bring that home. Second, there's a query about, please correct me if I get it wrong, because I didn't hear the question entirely. How does USI work with the government? Was that the question, Ms. Karki? Could you amplify that question? How can government work with think tanks? I'll get back to you, sir. I'll get back to you because I didn't understand your question at all. I'll get back to you. This one I partially understood, that's why. How does government work with think tanks? It's I think, traditionally, it's a rollover regurgitation policy. When you come up with new ideas, any ideas, government doesn't have the normal method of government is allow a discussion and a debate to take place so that all points of view can be examined in depth, key issues pulled out and then further filtered, and those are the ones that become policy inputs. That regurgitation is the job of think tanks. That is where you bring in a synthesis of the academic, the practitioner, the past practitioner, like some of us over here, and put the policy makers, practitioners, theorists, academicians, strategists in one room and create a khichdi and mix it around and see what you can get out of the Sagar Manthan, and that becomes a feedback into the policymaker. And that has been a great role of all think tanks, and that is why the number of think tanks that we need actually needs to be more. India has a large number of think tanks, but actually we need to have more. And that's why here, NICE has done so much in the last 10 years in being able to build up its links and provide policy inputs. There's a question, sir, regarding Agniveer and Gorkhas. Two issues across here that we've got to remember. One, Gorkhas have been part and parcel of the Indian Armed Forces for 2 centuries now. Since independence, there has always been a free flow for them to come and join. The aspect of Agniveer needs to be again looked back. As I said, let's look from far to appreciate the near. Color service was non-pensionable, always, historically, in India, as well as most other countries where it remains that way today. It has always been short tenures, high intensity training, capitalize on the youth and their energy, build up their character and discipline, give them a broader perspective, and they come back and feed into society as more enabled with a certain amount of money in their pocket, better for their experience, and the government harnesses that experience to be utilized in other fields, and that's how you go about building up your human capital for national growth. Now this is the normal. This is what changed since 1975 in India. And what changed in India by extension, because of the agreement that we've always had and honored, was automatically extended to the Gorkhas as well. But till 1975, the color service in the Indian Armed Forces was 7 years. It was non-pensionable. It looked upon getting the youth young, using them, training them, imparting education to them, enabling them, and thereafter they went back into civil society as strong members of society. That is the way it has always been. Only since 1975, for reasons at that time that we were undergoing major technological changes, there were socio-political changes, there were economic challenges. For a variety of reasons, we converted to having a pensionable tenure, but the debate and discussion in India of reverting back to the color service goes back to at least the late 1980s. Within 15 years of having introduced pensionable service, the debate and discussion happened when the first lot were retiring after 15 years to say, was this better? Was the previous model better? Now, that discussion and debate has carried on for several decades. Finally, a decision is taken, let's revert back to the way it was, which has served us well, has served internationally everybody well. Now, whatever we have done in India, when we introduced pensionable service, it was automatically extended to the Nepali troops as well. When we reverted back to non-pensionable service, the same has automatically been extended. It is available to you. But as I understand, for various sets of concerns within Nepal, the recruitment has not yet happened. But I am quite confident the day you take the decision and say, all right, let's go back to the way it was. Remember when I said continuity, we go hundreds of years. Let's look at history with a larger perspective. The concerns that we are talking about, let's look at history and see were those concerns validated the way it was pre-1975. Same way today. This year, the Agniveers, the first batch of Agniveers in India are completing to the completion of their tenure. It is going to be a challenging time for us as well. But we are looking back at history and saying, how did we assimilate them throughout? Even pre-independence, how were the troops assimilated? They all served for 3 to 4 years at that time and were demobilized. How did we take care of their requirements as well as use them as a human capital resource to give back into society? So that, by extension, remains with you as well. As I understand, there is no debate or discussion or doubt in India. Whatever we are doing as far as Indian Army and Indian Armed Forces are concerned, Nepal, Nepalese personnel, Gorkhas are part and parcel of it. You only have to take a choice and say, all right, let's go back and let's see. Let's look at changes, as I said, changes and challenges not as setbacks but as opportunities. We look upon them as opportunities, we move forward together. Whatever we are going through, we're going through together. We're willing to go through it together. So I am not familiar with the concerns and discussions and debate as to why the Nepali troops are not joining up. But I'm sure as and when those are addressed, we will revert back to the way it has always been for centuries and will continue. Now, the first two questions that were there, sir, one was regarding border management. I didn't understand it entirely, very clearly. You spoke about how can we improve border management. Was that the question, sir? What is there to improve in border management? You have open borders. Why do you want to manage open borders? What you have today is something unique across the world. The world over there are controls and restrictions. The world over, people have had to struggle for decades to try and introduce open borders. Here we have inherited them. You only have to use technology in order to safeguard against threats that may emerge of movement from one side to the other. And that technology is when you talk of information systems, cyber systems, surveillance systems, e-governance, linking up our systems with each other, sharing of intelligence. But let's do it in a manner that does not take us back in any manner. Because what we've achieved and what is naturally achieved by us across the world, it has taken countries decades to even get to the first step, let alone there'll be 100 years before they reach the kind of familiarity and comfort zone that we have between India and Nepal. So let's not look at border management, I would suggest. Let's look at border governance. Let's look at security governance. Let's look at security cooperation. Let's not look at anything that may impinge in a negative manner on the free flow of trade, economy, goods, people. That will not be to our interest. So the other question that you spoke of Aryavartan and cultural ideology. Could you say that again? I didn't understand that question. Absolutely the same as what you said. That we have shared civilization, shared cultural values, roti beti ka rishta, isse bada kya ho sakta hai? Can there be any relationship larger than roti beti ka rishta? Now, challenges and changes will come in every family. But this underlying principle of what you share between two people, between two cultures, between two civilizations, that doesn't change. And that is what gives us the common strength to be able to deal with changes and challenges that may come across. There will be temporary dips up and down, but let's step back and look at it not in terms of weeks or even years, sometimes not even decades. Let's look back and see across centuries how we managed it and how it has been to our mutual advantage. And I am very confident, sir. As I said, I look from the seas to the mountains, from far to near. When you look from far, these minor ups and downs and challenges, minor dips. When you take the overall trajectory of growth and relations, it is, as you very correctly have brought out in a beautiful Sanskrit shloka. Pardon me, my Sanskrit knowledge is not as strong as yours. Maybe I need to come back to Nepal and study some more about it from you, sir. But that's the way it is, that's the way it has been, and that's the way I'm sure will continue to remain. Thank you.